Today we're talking about where love found me, worthy. Worthy means to have a sense of value or importance inside a person. The question I want to ask you is, where does your sense of value come from? Where do you discover your feeling of worth? What makes you feel so important that makes you just want to stand and give thanks? Where do you get your sense of worth from? A lot of us, we get our sense of worth from what we do, right? You go to a party, you have a social event, you're an actor, you meet somebody, first names, and then you talk a little bit, and one of the first questions you ask them is what? Well, what do you do? Where do you work? What's your career? You see, a lot of us get our sense in what we do or what we have done, but what happens when you can't do anymore? When you can't work anymore? When because of an accident or something has happened or sickness or illness, you just are unable to work, and that which has defined you for so many years does not define you anymore, or maybe even retirement. Where do you find your worth? For other people, it's their value, their wealth, what they own, their portfolio, the diversity of it, the cars they drive, the homes they live in. You know, they get a feeling of worth from the wealth that they have. But what happens when the market crashes, their job gets downsized, and they can't earn money anymore, and instead of having wealth, they move into poverty? Where do you get your sense of worth when your wealth is gone? For other people, it's still, they like being the good person. They get a sense of worth from being good. But what happens when the good person is not good anymore? They make straight A's in schools, make good decisions, hang out with the right people, but then they don't. And the good child becomes the black sheep. And that which defined them, gave them value, their goodness, is no longer part of their lives. Where do they get their sense of worth? I know for me, one area I get my sense of worth in is the fact that I like people to see me as being disciplined. One of my proudest days when someone was talking with me, they said, "Scott, you may be one of the most disciplined people I have ever met." Man, my head got so big I couldn't even walk out the door. I was feeling so proud of myself. Man, you know, that's why I like the Army. That's why I like working hard. That's why I like playing basketball, hard-nosed basketball. And whatever I do all out. I don't even waste time doing it. And that's why my hair's cut short and I keep the shape the way I do. I like people to see me as being a disciplined person. That gives me part of who I am, my sense of worth. But what happens in my life when I get so old, I can't play basketball anymore. I can't work hard anymore. I can't do much anything anymore. Where will I get my sense of worth from then? Where is it that you get your sense of worth from in your life? You know, that's what we're going to be looking at in our story today. Jesus is full speed in his ministry. He's been hanging out with broken people, sinners just like us. And they said, you know, Jesus, you're a friend of sinners. He said, well, yeah, you're right. You've got me. I confess, busted. I'm a friend of sinners. I like hanging out with people who don't have it all together like you think you do. Then he tells three parables why. And the third story is just a very powerful story about where we get our sense of worth from. And it's a story about a father and a son. And the story begins with the self-centered son. Luke chapter 15. Verse, there we go. All right, John, can you back it up on? I'm sorry, I pushed it too many times. Jesus continued, there was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything to eat. Notice he goes to his father and he starts out the conversation to his father by saying, "Father, give me. Give me." Self-centered people are all about themselves. And because it's all about them, they enjoy taking from others to meet their needs, their wants, whatever it is that they're into. They're like a vacuum cleaner, and they walk into a room and they suck the air out of the room and they suck the breath out of everybody who's standing in that room. It's all about them. And he goes to his dad and said, "Dad, because it's all about me, give me my share of the estate." And because it's all about him, he set out for a distant country, even though he knew that leaving his father would break his heart. And because it was all about him, he squandered his wealth in wild living on himself. It was all about him. Self-centered people are all about having their needs by taking from everyone else. And the son felt he was living a good life until the life wasn't so good. Because after he spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country. After he was out of money, the whole country, entire country, was out of food. And this son, who had never, ever known what need was suddenly in need all the time. And so he hired himself out, and he longed to fill a stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating. Here is this person, this young man who had always taken from everyone else, and now he was thinking about taking the slop from the pigs. At least he's consistent in who he is and what he's about. And no one gave him anything because in his life he had never given anything to anyone else. But you see, that's sort of how life works. In the book of Matthew, Jesus says, whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me and for others will find it. Whoever loses life in taking, it's all about themselves and taking from others, will lose the very life they're trying to find. But whoever will give their lives away to me in service to others will find the life that they were created to live. And I know this is absolutely true because we are experiencing this exact thing here in our church family at Temple Baptist. We've stumbled upon this reality, which has just recently come to full understanding of me, and it's like this. As we help others find Jesus' love finds us. As we help others find Jesus' love at the Eden Center, in our community, in this world, in our friends, as we help Jesus' love, others find Jesus' love, it sort of works that Jesus' love ends up finding us and changing us. This happened the other week ago, Thursday, when we were having the worship service at the Eden Center. We were all gathered in that space. We talked about it last week. We saw pictures of who was there and what we did. And we talked about the Sermon on the Mount. And the message was, if you have anything against your brother or sister and you come to worship, you first need to leave your gift at the altar, go make things right with your brothers and sister, and then come and worship me. And we talked about how we cannot be right with God and be wrong with others. That we first have to make sure we're right with others so that we can be the way we need to be with God. And it got real in there. And I challenged the Eden people to go to be Jesus to others that week. And after we finished, Brian came up to the front and began leading in the song, "Oh, Praise the Name of the Lord our God." And we began singing. And then we really began singing. And it's almost impossible to explain. But in that moment, I began looking around as I'm sitting there. It's like I felt the presence of God just fill that space in there. And as we sang and our voices got louder, I suddenly jumped up out of my chair and I kicked the doors over the activity center and made sure they were wide so that everyone in the building could see us, hear us singing our praises to God. Man, it was a moment. God was touching our hearts and lives. And once we finished, I said to Brian, Brian, we cleaned up, I said, Brian and Caden and Isaiah, I said, remember this day. Remember this day. This doesn't always happen. But it happens sometimes. And when it does, you always hold on to it. And that was just an amazing time of worship there at Eden. When we help others find Jesus' love in turn finds us and it changes us. And the Son is self-centered. But then he's changed. And he says, when he came to his senses, and it literally means when he remembered who he was. He remembered he was his Father's son. And once he remembered he was his Father's son, he began to act differently and began to live differently because he began to think differently. Instead of thinking about himself, he thought about home. You see, Jesus believed that no one is truly themselves as long as they're away from home, but as they begin to journey home, it is in that journey that they find themselves. And instead of going back home to take the way he had done before, he was going home hoping that he would be accepted. He says, how many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. You see, the son began to change when he owned the truth of his life. When he owned the reality that he is not living the life that he was created to live. That he was not making the decisions the Father wanted him to make. He was not becoming the person that he was intended to be. And more than squandering his wealth, he realizes he had squandered his life. And there's nothing sadder and with people and as I move among people to come in contact with people and hear their stories and lives and to be with this person as they come to realize that the life they have lived is not the life they had wished they had lived. And he owns it. And he sets out to go back home and says, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. So he said, Dad, I'm coming home, Dad. I'm coming home. But there's one problem. I'm no longer worthy to live in the home that I'm coming back to. Dad, I've not lived the life I should have lived. You see, I am no longer worthy. There was a time when he felt he was worthy. He felt worthy. A time when he was in right relationship with his Father. There was a time when he had the blessings of that relationship, but that time had come and gone because of the decisions he had made, the life he had lived. And he says, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. So make me like one of your hired men. See, the son had no sense of worth or value anymore because he did not believe his father, his dad, could ever value him. But yet he got up and went home anyway. And so the son who is self-centered, the son who's changed. And as he journeys back home, the son discovers his worth. Says, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. His father saw him. His father saw what the world had done to a son. His father saw what the son had done to himself. His father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. To compassion is to have compassion, is to see the suffering of another and have a great, compelling need to do something about it. And because the father was filled with love for his son, he immediately was filled with compassion for his son. You see, the father never forgot what the son just remembered. The father never forgot what his son was his son. He never forgot the love he had for his son. He never forgot that relationship, that the son could never, ever not be his son. And so he could never not love him. Compassion compelled us to seek to raise, and we did over $10,000, $11,000 to help the suffering people in Ukraine. Compassion compels Barb and Dan to go to the homeless in our community on the canteen run. Compassion compels us and calls us to continue to go back to Eden and bring the presence of Jesus Christ at the Eden Center. And compassion caused this father to run to his son and throw his arms around him and kissed him. And the son had a speech prepared. He had it ready. He had practiced. He had a long time to practice because he'd been walking home from the distant land. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father did not acknowledge what the son had said. He didn't even care what he said. He didn't care what he had done. He didn't care where he'd been. All he cared about was what was happening in that moment as he and his son stood together in this space, father to a son, kissing him and hugging him. That's all that mattered to this father. And the son said, but dad, I'm not worthy. But the father said, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. But Dad, I'm not worthy. The father put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. The son, Father, I'm not worthy. Bring the fatted calf and kill it, and let's have a feast and celebrate. You see, the son's worthiness was not wrapped up in what the son thought about himself. The son's worthiness was found in what his father thought about him. And his father thought he was the most incredible human being on the face of the earth. And he felt his son was worth everything. And he said, bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. And just as the father thought the son was worth everything, was everything to him, God thinks you are worth everything as well. God thinks that you are so worthy that he sent his son to die for you. God thinks that you are so worthy that he sent his son to take the nails for you. God thinks that you are so worthy that it was worth sending his son to be resurrected for you. God feels you are so worthy that he gave the best that he had so we can experience the best that God has for us. And God finds us worthy. And I want you to hear that. You are worthy. Because God the Father loves you. And Jesus, his Son, gave his life for you. And that makes us worthy. And they had a feast. And they began to celebrate. And we're going to celebrate right now through our coming together in this time of communion. You see, the Son remembered who he was. He was his Father's Son. And it's in communion we remember who we are. We remember we are God's beloved children. The Son came to die for us.